Russia has bombed a children's hospital in Kiev. Shocking news coming out of the war between Russia and Ukraine, or at least that's the way it's being presented. For sure, a hospital was hit by a missile, but it matters a lot about what actually happened there. And as is predictable, the West is expressly saying that this was an intentional targeted effect by the Russians. No questions about it. No possibility of anything else. And they're using this moral outrage. They're going to try to twist this into something to support more military operations. We're going to see exactly how that's being done right now. But first of all, I want to bring on today's guest is former CIA analyst Larry Johnson, absolute favorite of the show, becoming one of our most popular guests here. Larry, welcome to the show today.
Danny, I'm always honored to be with you, man.
And listen, this is the double. I was going to have you on or ask you to be on today, no matter what, just because it's the opening day of the NATO summit, and I want to kind of go through what some of the people are saying on there. But with this happening, I guess just last night for our time, lots of things going on here, because here's how the West is reporting it. Well, Gary's got some of that footage there, but the West is just outright saying Russia strikes children's hospital. Not that they're reported to, not that they're rumored to, but that they did. But as I understand, well, actually, I know you've got some different views because I've seen some of your tweets and some of the other things you've done on other channels. But first of all, I want to show you a little bit what the administration is saying about this certain act. Here's John Kirby when he was asked about it.
Do you believe the timing of these strikes is meant to send a message to NATO ahead of this week's summit?
It's hard to draw a line, Mary, to that. I mean, sadly, this is par for the course for Mr. Putin to hit civilian infrastructure, and he doesn't care whether he's hitting hospitals or residential buildings. I can't draw the line that this is some sort of message. But look, I mean, as I said, what you're going to see over the course of the week is a very set of strong signals and messages to Mr. Putin that he can't wait NATO out, can't wait the United States out, that we're going to continue to support Ukraine.
Larry, even before you start getting into some of the, some of the forensics of why you can say with such confidence that this was not a Russian direct attack, I want to just point out from a military perspective, there is literally no value in doing some of this. Even if you took morality out of it and said someone has literally no moral code whatsoever, they just have a military they want to win, there is no value to doing this. It's not a shock value, especially coming at the 2.5-year mark of the war. It doesn't give any military benefit. It is 100% negative, because if they had done so, it just gets moral outrage. It fires up the other side and gives them more impetus to resist. So there is no value or reason why any nation would ever directly target a children's hospital. And of course, when you put the morality in there, that makes it even less likely so, because we haven't seen Russia do that certainly on any specific scale that I'm aware of since this war began. But you have some knowledge about why you don't think this was a Russian attack.
Yeah, well, I'm not even thinking. I know. I can see the video. So let's start with the fact. Russia launched, the Ukrainians say they launched 38 missiles. And the Ukrainians said, oh, we shot down 30 of the 38. Okay, I posted a video at my site. You can see 5 Iskanders coming in. And the profile of the Iskander, it has a certain wing configuration. And yeah, there it goes. You can see it coming down. There were 5 of those. And these explosions, they were targeting military facilities. Then there's a video that shows the missile that hit the hospital. It does not fit the Iskander profile at all. In fact, it fits the profile of a NASAM, a NATO-supplied surface-to-air missile that's designed to be an air defense missile. And it missed the Iskander. And as William Tell, what goes up must go down, or Isaac Newton, the laws of gravity, missile went up, missile came down, and it hit the children's hospital. We also know that it's not the explosion from that warhead on that particular missile is not big. And that's why there was the images of that hospital are, appear all devastating, except, no kids were killed. I think 2 doctors were killed. Very, very small number of people actually killed and wounded in what ostensibly would have been a Russian missile attack. If the Iskander had hit that hospital, there wouldn't be anything left. That's number two. What's really interesting is the propaganda of this, because the Russians launched this Operation Daylight. Why did they launch it in daylight? Because the sites that they struck in Kiev, military sites, factories that were involved with producing weapons and doing repairs, they wanted to kill day workers. They wanted to actually hurt them. You know, in the past, they'd done some stuff at night where there was no chance of killing workers. No more. Russia hit them in the daylight, number one. Number two, all of these reports from the West, I mean, it was flooded almost instantly. Same message. Oh, Russia's bombed this children's hospital. Russia's bombed this children's hospital. All right, I'll take you back over the last 7 months of Israel regularly bombing children's hospitals, regular hospitals in Gaza. You don't see that kind of coverage of that. Hell no. They ignored that. Or the attacks that Ukraine routinely has made on civilian structures in Belgorod. You know, cafes, theaters. They're not military targets. It's been routine over the last 2 years. And the West, not a word. So when I saw this coordinated campaign, you know, the Western planners probably thought it was a godsend to get it on the eve of NATO. Because, oh, we can play this up that Russia's bombing the children's hospital. Meanwhile, none of that news coverage was allowed to go. You can clearly see on the video at least other 5 major explosions in Kiev. And any journalist worth their salt would have said, what the hell was that?
Yeah. In fact, Gary, while he's continuing to talk, if you could bring that first one back up of the 5, because I want to highlight something that Larry said, because I independently got an information from another military source, which pointed out really the same thing, that the warhead, I think for the Iskander, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 88 kilograms of explosive device, or maybe it's 150. I can't recall.
Yeah, it's actually bigger than that.
Like 5 times bigger than the NASM's missile. So he said it's about roughly the size of 2 155 artillery shells. So big, but not anywhere near as big as the Iskander. So you can see the massive, like that one right there, these massive explosions here. And note when we show the other video, when you see that NASM missile go by, number one, it's dramatically different than the missiles you're seeing there. You can physically see the difference in shape, size, fins, all that stuff. But then you see the other one go, and you see a little flash of light on a building next to it. You'll see
there it is.
Plays in fast motion. You'll see it's a small, relatively small explosion in comparison to what the other ones you just did. So clearly they're not the same kind of missile.
Right. Yeah. And this is not the first time that you've had damage done to civilian targets in Kiev by errant air defense missiles fired off by the Ukrainians. And, you know, what's astonishing is they're lying, the depths of their lies. Oh, yeah, we shot down 30 of the 38 Iskanders. Oh, yeah, really? You don't see them shooting down. You don't see them shooting down a single one in Kiev, not one.
Right.
You do see the miss.
They claim they got 30 of 38. Then how is it that they didn't get 5 in a row? I mean, that just doesn't pass the common sense test.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, look, this is the only thing NATO's good at, lying, building a propaganda campaign. But see, and if this was just straight up news reporting, the news would be the same whether it was a bomb going off in Kiev or in Belgorod or in Gaza. It would just, hey, there was this attack. But you can go on. There's on the Telegram channel, I saw one comparison that when the Israelis hit the hospital, the headline was, "Oh, Israel roots out Hamas fighters hiding in hospital." And the Russian title, "Russia murders children." You know, and it's like, okay, now we understand nobody's coming at this with any kind of objectivity. They've got an axe to grind, and it's entirely to gaslight the public and to say, no, yeah, Ukraine has a chance. All we got to do is just let's give them some more support. And by God, Ukraine's going to roll to victory. just like Joe Biden's going to beat Donald Trump in the next debate.
Yeah, and just to perfectly transition here, let me show a graphic representation of exactly what you just said earlier today on MSNBC. When this guest was asked, I think his name is Ian Brzezinski, he was asked about the Russian attack on the hospital, and he said this.
Good to see Mika and Joe and Ann, of course. Let me just say that, those pictures we saw, those were war crimes committed by the Russians. That is unjustified brutality. And at this summit, the key issue is how is the alliance going to respond? Will it present a strategy that will enable Ukraine to win quickly, decisively, and on its terms? And to your question, does NATO have the resources to apply it? I'm not entirely convinced this summit is going to provide that.
Yeah, and he goes on to talk more about what they ought to do, what they ought to give, et cetera. But the bottom line is he's trying to manipulate that into justification for continuing the support. And he actually says, again, with a straight face, at the 2.5 year mark, are we going to support them enough to decisively win or something less? As though 2023 never happened, it never existed. And that just, I don't know. It leaves me without words how people can make this kind of statements, oblivious to what has happened, what is happening, and the balance of power between these two sides.
He's genetically predisposed to lying. So Ian Brzezinski is the son of Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, and a pretty good failure in that role. So Ian's continuing in his father's footsteps. And Ian's sister, Mika, wife of, I guess, third wife of Joe Scarborough. So, this, in Washington, it's what we're looking at is a version of political military incest. They call it incest, the game the whole family can play. So that's what's going on here. You've got this corrupt organization, and Ian Brzezinski he could be the poster child for it, because instead of telling the truth, instead of coming clean with the American people about what's going on, that, we've thrown billions of dollars. We've thrown HIMARS, Patriots, Abrams, Bradleys, Javelins. We're going to throw in some F-16s too, but it has not stopped the Russians. The Russians are bigger, they're stronger, they're better equipped, and they militarily outclass us today. But no, you can't say that, because if you say that, it is you're exposing the fact that the king is walking around, or the emperor is walking around with no clothes on, and that ain't allowed in Washington.
And here's the I guess the anguishing part. Well, one of the anguishing parts to me, anyway. You say Brzezinski may be the poster child, but he ain't the only child. Here's another child which is commonly saying these same kinds of things. Again, we go back to John Kirby.
You will hear a very strong reaffirmation by NATO allies this week about the fact that the alliance is definitely going to be in Ukraine's future. No question about that. And you're going to hear about what that bridge to NATO is going to look like more specifically.
Okay. You just laid out part of the reason why this is such nonsense about Russia being bigger, stronger, militarily. They got experience in this kind of war, which we don't even have, all that stuff. And we could add a whole lot to it on both sides of the calculation. Russia, its allies, Ukraine, its allies, their military industrial capacity on each side and how they're out of balance. And yet you have this complete and utter fiction that just ignores that entire calculation, doesn't even talk about that there's challenges, just said, yeah, man, even though NATO, by Russia's own account, is the reason we went to war, and many people have laid that out, you being key among many of them, that's what was the impetus for Russia to invade in the first place. And now then you're saying, instead of having any kind of talk about a negotiated settlement like Viktor Orban, like Fico from Slovakia and Hungary, I'm sorry, some of the other, Bulgaria, Turkey, who are also NATO members, who are saying we want peace. Ignore all that. We want more war.
Well, listen, war is profitable for the United States. And we've discussed this before, that in terms of the human cost, the United States has hardly paid any human cost. Now, in saying that, I know that there are veterans out there who have lost limbs. They've suffered traumatic brain injuries. They've suffered really irreversible conditions that will plague them the rest of their lives. And so I'm not in any way minimizing what they've suffered. But the fact of the matter is, 98% of Americans are not affected by that at all. And so it's easy to support wars when you don't pay any price. What sacrifices? People aren't having to forego gas. They're not doing like, even during World War II, there was rationing because the United States turned all of its domestic production into war production. And so, people couldn't get a new car. They had trouble buying new tires. So there were real sacrifices that people felt. Not today. What happens is you buy stock in Lockheed Martin or General Dynamics or Raytheon or the variety of other companies out there that are making money hand over fist, particularly drone operators, drone manufacturers. That's the future. So that's where all the money's going there. So these guys can say that because they're not being square with the American people, that we have no intention of living at peace with Russia. We want to destroy Russia because, number one, we find Russia morally repugnant. They don't tolerate homosexuality. They don't tolerate the LGBTQ transgender agenda. So we got to get rid of them there just for the social wokeness factor. They got all of this gas and oil and uranium and minerals and gold. Man, we want that. We got to have that. So we want to, that's what this is about.
Okay. I can see where the greedy factor of a person would desire those things. Okay. I desire some of the gold in Fort Knox. I desire some of the money in the bank down the end of my street, but I can't just go and get it. And even if I wanted to, it's inaccessible. I can't just grab it just because I want to. It's not that dissimilar to what you're talking about here, that those things exist in Russia and some here want it. It's inaccessible. You can't get it short of self-destructing with nuclear weapons. So there's some missing synapses here.
Well, so what we're doing, and this comes back to my old outfit, the CIA, is mounting, has an extensive covert action plan in place, and it's supported by the Brits, and the Brits have their own, trying to sow dissensions and create disunity within Russia to tear it apart from the inside. Which, one of the reasons they were behind these terrorist attacks a couple of weeks back that took place in Dagestan and in Sevastopol. So you're trying to weaken the Russian government. You're trying to sow chaos. That's one of the reasons, the West, starting in 1999, we're funding, providing financial support to radical Islamists in Chechen that were involved with an internal Islamic terrorist campaign against the Russian national government. The Russians ultimately defeated. Putin oversaw that. But again, that was Western backed. You've had Western CIA's been encouraging Ukrainian dissidents for years, going back to 1949, to launch attacks, again, to destabilize Russia. So, the Russians are looking at a subversion campaign against their government that's been backed and funded by the West. And what's fascinating is the West likes to complain that that's what Russia's doing to the United States. It's not even on the same scale. Russia's been content really to stay at home and mind its own business. We're the meddlesome ones.
Well, meddlesome is a kind term that I might use some different terms about what's been going on. But I'm going to show you a couple of other things that people are saying, because that's those two aren't the only poster children. There's others. There's a lot of posters that we got to show you about today. Here's another one with former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Wes Clark, who should know better than this, who should know about what is and isn't possible militarily. But here's what he's saying: at the 2.5 years of the war, at the 75th anniversary of NATO, here's what we ought to do.
All an air defense these countries have that are not on the front line should be pushed forward to Ukraine. Second thing is, you have to create ambiguity in Putin's mind as to what comes next. You can't simply say, here's what we won't do this, we won't do that. You've got to start talking like French President Macron has talked about, creating ambiguity. Send those French aircraft in, Put some French troops on the ground in Odessa. Put engineers in there to help rebuild the energy infrastructure. Get engaged. Show Putin we mean it.
Okay, we mean
Jesus.
what? Send in a
Yeah.
few troops in there. What the hell does he think's going to happen? So I want you to answer two things based on that right there. We'll get one after the other. First one, let's look at from the Ukraine side. So if we did what he suggested there and send French troops into Odessa and engineers in to help the Ukraine side on the front lines, what is that going to have impact on the ground?
There's none. They're going to die. But that's all it's going to do is create more body bags going back to France. This is what people don't grasp. And I mean, Clark, it's shameful. You want to increase ambiguity on the part of the Russians. So put yourself in the position as a Russian military planner or the senior intelligence officer for Vladimir Putin. If the West has created ambiguity, that means you're not sure what they're going to do. So what are you likely to assume? That they're going to bring you chocolate and roses and bottles of wine to say, oh, we love you? Or that they're going to attack you, that they're going to destroy you? With you got ambiguity, you're going to assume the worst. And once you assume the worst, that means you start acting in a way to counter that, which then escalates the threat, increases the likelihood of confrontation, which these morons want. And look, it would be one thing if we were actually, strong enough, militarily competent enough to handle it, but we're not. That's what is so alarming about these guys. We can't even stop the Houthis in the Red Sea. And that's NATO.
Wow,
It's
that's
not just
a
the
good
United
point.
States. It's Germany, it's France, it's England. Hell, England can't even get its ships out of harbor. And we're going to take on Russia? People, stop this madness. This war fever that has infected us in this society is just, it's alarming.
Yeah, infected. There's no more accurate term to use on that. It is an infection, and if we don't get it treated, it could eventually prove fatal.
Yeah.
I want to look at the other half of that equation there. So that's for the Ukraine side. It wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't be able to succeed. But how would the Russians counter that? If that's exactly what happened, what would they do? Would they be afraid to attack the French troops?
Oh, no. In fact, they're already doing it. So that's one of the reasons there have been reports that they have hit both some missile air defense sites that have had, quote, Western advisors. So they're killing Westerners right now. And the West is going out of its way to cover that up. That's the other reason Russia launched these missile strikes in daylight. Because, sometimes the production activities in Ukraine, despite the rhetoric, it's not going 24/7. They're just working daylight hours, banker hours. Well, that's why Russia's hitting them in the daylight. Because they're not just trying to destroy the infrastructure. They're going to destroy the workers now. And they recognize that several of those workers are these Western mercenaries, or they're sheep-dipped. They're intelligence officers that are working undercover or being presented as if they're independent. So Russia's stepping it up, and the pressure is just increasing all along the line. And I think they're really becoming more resolute with each passing day. That they're just saying, okay. They've recognized the West is intent on going to war with Russia. That's how they view it. And therefore, they are preparing and acting accordingly.
That's not good news. You're going to have to forgive me. I've got an issue with my camera. I'm going to try to get that fixed while we're talking here. But let's look at the other half of this, and that is, what is the possible strategic reaction from Russia? So they see what's going on with NATO right now, but what is going to be the prospect of them either just continuing on with this methodical operation that they're doing right now, or might they launch something larger to try to actually gain a military victory?
No, I think they're content right now to bleed out, because they're not just bleeding out Ukraine, they're bleeding out NATO in Ukraine. But at the same time, the Russians have embarked on this, let's call it the charm offensive. So, today you had India's leader, Modi, just into a 2-day love fest in Moscow. I mean, man, they were doing the bro hug, embracing. Putin was initiating it, man. He was known in the past as not being much of a hugger, but boy, they're hugging it out, and they're saying good things about each other. So what Russia doing is it's building up its alliances and its relationships with people around the world, with North Korea, with the Chinese, with the Vietnamese, with the Indians, with the South Africans, with the Brazilians, going around the world. And so what's the United States doing with India? We're threatening them with sanctions. We're saying, oh, you're going to cozy up to Russia? Well, we'll teach you. You keep that up, we're going to impose sanctions on you. Well, how do you think that's going to be met with by the Indians? How would you react if the United States was, you're a foreign country and the United States is threatening you? You finally just say, hey, you can shove it. We're not your slave. We don't have to do what you say. So all of this is accelerating that it's not just on the military front. It is also on the diplomatic front that the United States is becoming weaker by the day, partly by virtue of its, blind support for Israel, no matter what Israel does. And the fact that both Russia and China are strategically reaching out to these other countries and trying to create an economic alternative where they're no longer can be held hostage by the US dollar.
Now, I know that this October, I think it's October, there's a BRICS summit, which I understand 97 countries have been invited to. And the expectation is that some potentially significant number of them are actually going to join the BRICS to form what I think, Chas Freeman was on our show yesterday and said they're actually forming a genuine economic bloc that could threaten or at least provide competition to like the EU and just the Western views altogether. How serious of a challenge to the economic power of the West is that?
Oh, very serious. And the West is underestimating it by scad. So consider this. Right now, in terms of global GDP total is like $101 trillion. That means all the countries in the world. Of that, the United States accounts for about 28% of global GDP. Well, that's pretty sizable. But when you add the GDP of Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and let's toss in Iran because they're a new member, all of a sudden they're up around $58 trillion. So they're above double that of the United States. So
now,
there alone.
Also, we showed yesterday a clip where Putin was saying specifically about the SCO and this BRICS summit coming up that they want to provide an alternative economic system and a counterbalance to the dollar. Now, even if they don't replace the dollar, because as you say, the U.S. economy is still quite strong independently, so it's not going to replace the dollar, at least not anytime soon. But talk, if you could, about the impact if it's even weakened and minimized from what it currently is. What impact would that have on American national or economic security?
Well, America's not as strong as it thinks, okay? Because of our GDP, of that $28 trillion GDP, 75% of it is from services, okay? So that means instead of manufacturing, where you're building a car, you're building a tank, you're building your Boeing, building an airplane that the wheels fall off of, that's a whole nother story.
Separate, yeah.
Yeah. But, you're digging gold out of the ground or uranium or oil or gas, you're producing something. 75% of ours is, hey, Danny, would you like to supersize that cheeseburger? We'll give you an extra order of fries and a bigger Coke. Service, okay? That's what our economy is primarily. It's service. Hey, can I get a tip for my, I gave you a nice platter of eggs. In China, the 27% of their economy is manufacturing. And when you add up all the BRICS nations, they're actually producing things or digging things out of the ground that other people in the global South want. The global South's not lining up to say, oh man, I can't wait to hire some accountant from Arthur Andersen to come sell me some consulting services. So that's what the United States has bet its future on, services. When our largest companies don't produce anything. Google, what does Google produce? Facebook? I mean, wake the hell up, folks, because who are we buying our uranium from? Oh, that would be Russia. We're sanctioning Russia. By God, we condemn what you do, but hey, please sell us uranium.
So what would that do to the U.S. economy if the dollar starts to get weakened? Because it's been the reserve currency. We can print dollars anytime we need to handle internal things. But if more of the percentage of the global economy is done on denominated besides the dollar, what impact does that have on our interest rates and everything else?
Hyperinflation. The inflation rate in this country would just go off the charts. People will find, and you'll literally see prices changing from morning to afternoon. I've lived through that in Argentina back in 1984, where they had this hyperinflation. Because if you go back to Argentina in 1976, 77, before the start of what was called the Dirty War, at that time, Argentines would climb on their planes in either Buenos Aires or Cordoba. I lived in Cordoba. They'd do a flight. It's an 8-hour flight up to Miami. They would do a day flight. They'd go to Miami to go shopping and then fly back to Buenos Aires or Cordoba. It was just a shopping trip because their Argentine peso was so strong. It was a dominant. It was considered is equal to the dollar. Within 3-4 years, that currency had been so inflated that the tax you would have paid when you sold your house, let's say $1 million house, that a year later, that same amount of tax, that might buy you a Coke, a bottle of Coca-Cola, not a gram of illegal drugs, but not Hunter Biden's preferred snack. But that's what the United States is facing, that our supremacy with this dollar, because right now, man, we're riding high. Yeah, we are. The dollar has been, up until about 2 years ago, it was the thing. Everybody wanted it. But this war in Ukraine and the United States response in terms of both trying to seize Russian assets and impose draconian economic sanctions on them simply accelerated the push that both China, Russia, India, because they're all hearing the same message from the United States. You either do what we want or we're going to impose sanctions. And they go, you know what? We don't need that. You would not put up for a minute with a friend that every time you got together with that friend, they were criticizing you, telling you what to do, and attacking you. You would stop associating with that person. Well, guess what? The same kind of thing that happens in human relationships is happening on the international front. And the United States is weaker now than we were 2 years ago. And
Okay,
I see that accelerating, not decelerating.
Okay, well, here may be an accelerant. Gary, do you have that clip I was looking for? The one for Biden talking about running the world? I can't see if he may have it in a second. Because there's a couple things I want to set up. I'm going to show you something I talked about actually earlier on a show today from something Nancy Pelosi published today in the Washington Post, an op-ed. And when I read it, I thought, man, I need to get Larry to weigh in on this. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. I'm going to show you some of the things that she said. But before I do that, though, I want to remind people this is something that President Biden said last Friday on George Stephanopoulos' show when he was interviewed, and he was asked, should you continue to run? Here's Biden's view of what the United States is supposed to do.
Not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the central nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right.
We are the central nation of the world. We are running the world. And in this piece here by Nancy Pelosi, she is basically saying that NATO is a bulwark against tyranny, not a defensive network, like it was in 1949 against a legitimate military bloc in the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact, that held the balance of power between the two sides and prevented war for all those 40-something years. Now that it's this idea that's going to go after tyranny. And who does she lay out in direct, explicit form throughout at least half of this whole article? Belarus. So she's going to expand the target list from Russia to Belarus because he's a dictator. Ergo, we have to bring freedom to Belarus. That is an offensive action that is going on the attack. And I just want to ask, how do you think that the Russians and the Belarusians and anybody else in that part of the world is going to view a comment like that in light of what the president of the United States said?
Yeah, listen, they're not hearing impaired, okay? And even though we're speaking in English and their language is basically Russian, they don't have a problem with translation. You know, they can hit Google Translate or whatever, and so they understand clearly what we're saying. And so they say, okay, the West is preparing to go to war for us, which is, you know, that's one reason that this week Belarus was conducting military exercises with China. It's already got presence of Russian troops inside. And so what we've seen is the destruction of 50 years of U.S. foreign policy, where we tried to keep Russia and China away from each other, to divide them, because we recognize that if they ever came together and cooperated hand in glove, that it would represent a formidable power that we would be very hard pressed to defeat. And in fact, we can't defeat it. It's bigger than us, and we don't have the military capability anymore to do it. You know, I saw there was one Western pundit who was arguing that, oh boy, China's going to face a hellscape off its coast with drones when the United States, you know, decides to, defend Taiwan. And I'm going, how do people get to these positions and get to be this stupid? Because China outproduces the United States in drones by a factor of about 50. In other words, for every one we produce, they do 50. It's just from sheer volume. They overwhelm us. And yet, these clowns think they look at it only through this myopic vision that it's only the United States. That's all we have to worry about because we're the best, we're the greatest, we got the most money. Ignore the poop maps that you have to get in order to navigate yourself around San Francisco. That's a whole other issue. And the fact that you're going to get mugged on the streets in New York in broad daylight, ignore that. Yeah, you can't ride the subways in New York City, but by God, we are great. We are strong. And it's like, just go ride the subways in Moscow and then tell me how great and strong we are. You know, they don't allow you to defecate and urinate in the subway cars in Moscow. Imagine that. They limit human freedom in that way. Okay. So we've set ourselves up for a confrontation with these countries. They're coming together. They're not pulling apart. It's not India and China and Russia all going in their separate directions. They're coming together. And then here's Belarus now getting threatened again. All right. They're man up. And, you know, our rhetoric, our tough talk does not match our actual capability. That's what people don't grasp.
And you know, I mean, let's just look more fundamentally, even at the concept of, forget about the stupidity of adding a target list on there. The fact that you're trying to say at the 75th anniversary of NATO as a justification for why we need NATO, you're talking about going on the offense. I mean, Viktor Orban published a piece in Newsweek a week ago where he specifically said, hey, NATO used to be a defensive alliance, which he was good with. He agreed with it and believed in it. But he said, now we're wanting to go on the offense. That was before Nancy Pelosi justified his comments by what she wrote there. And now then you see Orban, you see Slovakia, Bulgaria, Turkey, 4 NATO countries at least that are on record publicly right before this alliance of saying, we need to talk about a peace thing. We need to talk about ending this war, not just providing a bridge to more war, which is all we're doing. And now Nancy Pelosi is advocating a new target list on top of that. How do we go from being a defensive alliance to try to bring peace to the world to now looking for dragons to go slay?
Hey, we need to have that enemy in order to keep justifying a defense budget that's approaching $900 billion. You know, we're rapidly headed towards $1 trillion. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. See if you can go back and remember. Do you remember when you were first alerted that your unit was going to be deploying to Iraq?
100%. Never forget it.
Was it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months before? Was it a week?
It was in November 1990. So basically 6 weeks before we deployed.
Yeah. So you got alerted before you deployed. And then once you deployed, the war didn't kick off until January 16th. So I remember that because it was my wife's birthday. But people don't understand that while we talk military things, there's always that planning process that precedes it, where units have to be alerted, they get the warning order, then they have to start, gathering up equipment, they have to, pack the bags and get all the equipment ready to deploy. It's not a snap of the fingers. It's not a 30-minute sitcom. It takes a while to get moving.
And let me just point out that the only reason we could deploy within 6 weeks is because we were already intensively training for years about tank-on-tank warfare. So we were already ready for that kind of fight.
Yeah.
I don't think many of our guys are today.
Yeah, and that's that's the other factor here. And yet, right now, when we've got the lowest number of personnel active duty in the Army, it's now down to 452,000.
Yeah.
We're talking about engaging in at least 2 different theaters against land-based armies that are on defense. And when you consider that Russia's active duty personnel are now roughly 1.3, 1.4 million, and the rule of thumb in the past has been, hey, any attacking force needs to have about a 3-to-1 advantage to overwhelm a defender. Well, I'm not great at math, but I can multiply, 1.3 million by 3. That's 3.9 million. And we got 452,000. I think we're a little shy. Okay. I'm a bit, got to step up that recruiting. I mean, come on, people. At some point, you got to step back and say, all right, whatever this plan is that we're following, it doesn't even make sense. It's like, you've seen that new Bugatti that they're selling, 4.5 million. It's like you or I said, yeah, I'll go out and put a down payment on it.
Yeah. And that I wouldn't be able to eat after that, but still, and look, I want to show you something else. Not many people saw this when it came out. We've had it on our show once before, but I think it bears repeating here because it really is a Western leader pulling the curtains back and saying, we need to take a hard look at ourselves, and tell me if you disagree with anything this man says here.
Idén, ha az Úristen is úgy akarja, lezárhatjuk a nyugati civilizáció egy dicstelen korszakát. Lezárhatjuk a progresszív, liberális hegemóniára épülő világrendet. Barátaim, a progresszív, liberális világszellem úgy, ahogy van, elbukott. Háborúkat, káoszt és békétlenséget, összeomló gazdaságot és zűrzavart hozott a világra. Zűrzavart a nemzetközi politikában, elszegényedést a családoknak, romló közbiztonságot az utcákon és a tereken. Furcsa korszak és különös szellem volt ez. Beszéljünk egyenesen, ez a világrend olyan vezetőket termelt ki, akik nem valók vezetőknek, akik alkalmatlanok a feladatra, akik hibára halmoznak, és végül a saját vesztükbe rohannak.
And do I just need to say it out loud? I mean, you're talking Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak before last week, Olaf Scholz. I mean, the list just can keep going on. These guys that are just Macron, just ignoring the realities on the ground, ignoring all these things that you've talked about so eloquently in this show and many times before. And they're just on this fantasy world. And now here's one leader, and of course he gets demonized all the time from the right, but he's not against the West. He's for the West and for his country, and he wants to see it get better. But until you're honest with yourself, there's no path forward.
Yeah, it'd be one thing, and this goes along with this embrace of this DEI culture, diversity, equity, and equality, where you eliminate merit and you promote people only according to physical characteristics that they have no control over. Whether you're born black or white, you didn't make that choice. It just that's what happens. But that you earn a right because of what you look like doesn't make sense. And so across the board with these leaders, it'd be one thing if they said, okay, I came into office, I reduced unemployment, I improved the average price income for the average American or the average Brit or the average French citizen, that prices went down, that you could point to prosperity, the crime decreased, but that's not what's happening. Anybody that looks at what has happened in the United States over the last 3.5 years, and I really consider myself more of a libertarian. I'm not aligned with any of the political parties, but for God's sakes, America is not going in the right direction where people feel that they can walk out on the streets safely. You get gangs literally descending upon gas stations, stores, looting them, running off. Nobody's punished. Criminals who commit crimes, they're released. And so you wind up with a lack of safety. And yet these people obsess about what's going on in other countries. And so if you look at the priority that's been applied by both Biden and then Rishi Sunak and now Keir Starmer, with the amount of money that they're devoting into Ukraine compared to what's going to their own citizens and their own improvements in their own country. I mean, it's shocking. And so you got to step back and say, why? I mean, what's driving this? Because they try to portray it that, oh, well, Russia's this incorrigible authoritarian state keen on reestablishing the Russian Empire around the world, which is really rich in irony, coming from countries, of all the European countries, and the United States has been an enabler of it, of colonial empires. I was listening the other day to Matthew Miller at the State Department. It's outrageous that Russia would go into and take land that's not its own. Okay, hey, look, if that's going to be our principle, then by God, let's everybody live with it, which means United States start giving up Guantanamo, Puerto Rico, Guam, Hawaii for starters, and then let's talk to the American Indian tribes to see how much of the land that we took from them they want back. Oh, we don't want to play that. Oh, wait a second.
No, hang on.
Yeah. So the hypocrisy level on this stinks. And when you look at what colonial Europe did to the people of Africa, the slaughter of millions. I mean, we're not talking tens of thousands. We're talking millions. And even after that, they impoverish these countries. They don't. It's one thing to go in and say, hey, we're going to be your partners. We're going to invest. We're going to build up the wealth. But man, when you rape the countries and you take all the wealth out and you leave kids that are, 10, 11, 12 years old working in mines to harvest the minerals that are used to build Teslas. So the wealthy upscale Americans can drive it and feel self-righteous about what they're doing to prevent climate change. Please.
Okay, so in the remaining time we got left, so that's all that stuff is a description of the world that is right now, and what NATO is trying to proclaim and celebrate, et cetera, here in Washington, just a few miles from where I'm sitting. But there is an election coming up in the United States, and we've seen a bunch of elections really shift the landscape in Europe, going back the last couple of months, especially. If Trump wins in this election, and with Biden's, significant problems that he's got coming up, and by the way, there's another potential landmine waiting on Thursday night when he's supposed to have a press conference where he has to answer questions at the end of the summit, which God only knows if he's going to get through that. But whether he does or not, the increasing likelihood is that Trump wins, and he will have a dramatically different view on this stuff. What happens to the world if he turns this stuff upside down and does some of the stuff he's claiming, like, I don't want to continue on with this war in Ukraine, I want to end it?
Yeah. Trump, to his credit, and I know this from a friend who was involved with the intelligence community and had regular access to Trump with briefings and on other issues. Trump was not favorably disposed to getting into wars overseas. He was very much against it. Now, the problem was his personnel selection. So he surrounded himself with the likes of Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and some of these other cats. And they were very insistent upon use of military power, military force. And so, there was it 2017, 2018, there was a claim that the Syrians had used chemical weapons again against the rebels. Now, it was entirely, not true. It was a lie. But we were looking for a pretext to step up the attacks against Syria because the war was not going well for us. And I know for a fact that, Trump resisted, but he was finally bullied into having to do that. And
Interesting.
but I have a friend who was at the the military command center there in Qatar, and he got on the horn with his Russian counterpart and said, "Hey, so we're going to be launching 20 cruise missiles in 2.5 hours. It's going to this location, so you want to make sure that all your personnel and equipment are out of that location." That's what actually happened. Stage managed. We launch the missiles. We blow up a bunch of dirt and maybe kill some sand spiders. And if you've ever seen one, they need to be killed. But
I have. Yeah.
that. But Trump is not one to necessarily start a war. He will in Israel. Set that aside. But when it comes to China and Russia, he's not interested in seeing how many Americans he can get killed. And I think. But the problem is he's surrounded by a deep state that wants to do that.
Yeah.
In the past, they benefited from it. And what frightens me is that because they've never paid the physical price and they think that we're now protected by our oceans, that we won't suffer what the people of Ukraine are suffering. I mean, what the people of Ukraine are suffering now as a consequence of this war that we're aiding and abetting and encouraging it's going to change the landscape for centuries in terms of human population. We saw it. Same thing happened in Paraguay back during the Chaco War. They lost so many men that it was, it affected their population growth for 2 or 3 generations. This is going to affect the Ukrainians for multiple generations.
Yeah, for generations for sure. Yeah. So on that happy note, well, I think we'll bring this one to a close here. I think we pretty much covered this one pretty good, and we'll of course continue to watch this as we go forward, and definitely as we get any kind of outcome from this this summit here, and whatever kind of statements are made at the end, any kind of conclusions drawn, we'll definitely be bringing you up on that. I want to make sure everybody is aware of your website there, or Son of the New American Revolution. Remind me what the address is for that again.
Yeah, sonar21.com, SONAR 21.com.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff there. I know a lot of our folks can never get enough of you on there. So if you can't, then you have some place where you can go get some more. So go check out Larry on that channel there, and we will have you back as soon as we have a chance.
Thank you, Danny. Always a pleasure, man.
Always love having you. And always love having you guys too. And just want to make sure you're aware that not only do we ask you to like and subscribe and all this, because that helps us expand the channel, helps us get it to other people who don't have it. But there's also, we want to invite you to join our Daniel Davis Deep Dive Army. Become a member of this channel where you get private things that no other people get. We're going to have another one of those. It's called the Deep Dive Army Huddle. This Friday, and it's only for members only. We get to know each other better. We directly engage with you. You get to ask all kinds of questions. Just a lot of great stuff, and you can only get it if you're a member. So do hit that membership. It's I think $4.99 a month. And well worth it, because you get stuff that frankly you wouldn't get anywhere else. And even on our channel, you only get it if you're a member. So thank you very much. We will look forward to seeing you later. By the way, I will be broadcasting live from in front of the NATO Summit here in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, 10 a.m. We'll be with Matthew Ho. Don't want to miss that one, because that's literally live from the front door of NATO. So we'll see you tomorrow morning on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.